as you heard, I'm from Charlottesville, and it is indeed very special for me to be back. Many in the room know that I came to be of service to my mom's transition before she passed. She was over at the Martha Jefferson House. And so I had been coming back once a month for a long time when she was living in her home, her childhood home, my childhood home, just about a mile from here. And when she moved to the Martha Jefferson House, I got a call from her doctor. I came here. I thought I was just in California for a weekend trip to fundraise for Peace in Schools. Got a call from her doctor. I only had like formal gear for fundraising. It was February, flew straight here, and then didn't leave until May of last year. And so it's very special for me to have flown in last night and for the first time in a year be driving by without seeming creepy and stalking my mother's childhood home last night. Like, how slow can you drive without being weird, right? Without someone saying like, why is that car driving so slow in front of our new house? But then, yeah, tonight when I leave here, I'm going over to the Martha Jefferson House to visit with these amazing caregivers that just gave and gave and gave. And I'm so looking forward to thanking them in person, having not seen them for a year. So it's very special for me to be here, and I thank you for coming out and spending time with me tonight. Just for those in the room that are interested in Peace in Schools, we are now in California. We're changing our model. I started that nonprofit 10 years ago, and when I started it, it was one semester-long class in one high school, and we're now virtually district-wide in Portland, Oregon, and we're changing our model so that we train the educators directly. Instead of when I started it, I hired contemplatives that had to partner with the school educators. So now we're in a couple schools in California, and I just met right before I came here. I live on Whidbey Island now, and I went on that retreat with Julie, and I was like, why would I ever leave this place? Just this last week, I met with someone about going into Seattle. So hopefully we'll hit some of these West Coast places that are going to be a little more quick to adopt such programming, and then Charlottesville. So I did come in. I just want to let those of you who I haven't had the pleasure to meet before tonight know that I have been really enjoying a book collective group that when my mom was here, I was meeting with in the next room across the hall to begin going through the chapters of this book, which at that time was sort of hot off the press. And then after my mom passed, it made sense to go back out west. I was living in Portland, Oregon at that time. So I went back out west, and we've been meeting through Zoom once a month. So I just want to let you know that if you're coming in tonight and it feels a little like, whoa, this person's just sort of throwing us in the deep end, just know that we are focusing on chapter 11 of the book. So I apologize that it may feel like you've missed a lot. I'm going to leave plenty of room for exchange and dialogue. So if there's anything that you want to ask about the style of meditation I'm going to lead tonight, please feel free to just speak up and know that, yes, you're not making it up. I'm going straight to what is this part of the arc in the book that I sort of walk people there. So this, for those that have read the book, is from chapter 11. And I believe it's customary here to begin with a meditation and then take a short break and then have a discussion. So I will be following suit. I rarely come into a space and read a meditation. I really get a lot of joy from letting the meditation arise spontaneously just based on who I'm sitting with. Tonight, I'm going to read from the book because I have a vested interest in you all buying my book. So I figure if you like it, in all seriousness, many people in the room know that I loved getting to read the audiobook. I have no idea if it's like good for an author regarding sales to say, oh, the audiobook is the way to go. Maybe I like make more money from the hardcover book or whatever, or the paperback, but so I have no idea. But what I like about having gotten to read my own book in the studio for Sounds True in Colorado is that so many people have reported to me that they appreciate going back and listening to the contemplations again. And it's hard to read a meditation in a book. I had to frame it, instead of calling them meditations, I had to call them contemplations and just invite people to be in a slowed down place where there could be mindful reading that isn't just digesting information as much as a person can do that. But for me, I find it hard to have the same kind of experience if I'm reading a meditation. But I thought I'd go ahead and read this from chapter 11 so that if you do enjoy it, you could listen to it again if you wanted. This chapter is called Return to Surrender, Turning Toward What Is. And I started it off with a quote by a friend and colleague of mine named Justin Forrest Miles. This is from an article he wrote. When we realize all of existence, ourselves included, as uncreated yet potent spaciousness, there is no fear of being destroyed. Do want to say again, this is a blend of a meditation and a contemplation. So what I mean by that is this is an opportunity to be in inquiry in the mind of meditation. So it's a little different than some other meditations I might guide in a setting like this. I want to invite you to begin by settling in, letting the body be exactly as it is in this moment. Settling in and letting the mind be exactly as it is in this moment. And I want to invite you tonight to begin by asking, what's here now? Begin by asking, what part of you is here now? Whatever is, whoever is, let this be. Allow whatever is to be exactly as it is. And now consciously bring in the image of something you tend to believe you don't like. Pick something you don't have a lot of charge around to start with. We could play with feeling lonely, for example. Choose something that's relevant for you. Allow yourself to be quiet and still, no need to force anything. And just allow. And gently inquire into the nature of this experience, this loneliness, let's say. Gently explore. What self-talk is present? What are you saying to yourself about this experience? And then see through this self-talk. Nothing you need to judge or reject. It's transparent. This self-talk is transparent. Simply move through it. What emotions are present? What feelings are here? can see through these emotions and feelings. Nothing you need to judge or reject. Simply swim through them. They are empty. Now consciously explore what's happening in the body. What sensations are present? Is there anything to these sensations other than vibration? Gently, without judgment, explore this vibration. Let the vibration simply be vibration. Move through it in your mind's eye. Notice how you know this self-talk. These emotions, these sensations. Surrender the self-talk to the vastness of this awareness. You know all of these experiences through awareness. Surrender emotion to this presence. Surrender sensation to being. Like a dense cloud expanding, opening, becoming translucent. Releasing into the vastness of the open sky. Self-talk, emotion, sensation, all vibration in vast awareness. Pure consciousness. Being. Turn toward. Move into and through vibration. Not as if you're separate from it. More like the way a drop of water moves into a pond. The way a river flows toward and into the sea. Move toward, in, through. Release. Surrender anything that would imply that you are separate from this vibration. Surrender it to presence. To luminous being. Surrender it to the sea. This sea shining with countless drops of water. And these drops all shining with the sea. There can be no drop without this water. Even if the drop is colored by something filled with algae, let's say, the same suchness that is water still shines through. The same suchness, the same being shines through what the mind labels loneliness. Or any experience you're working with. Any experience like loneliness is simply the activity of the mind coloring the vastness of being, but not other than it. What beautiful and complex creatures we are. We have the capacity to attend to the coloring or to what's being colored. We can attend to the experience the conditioned mind labels loneliness, the self-talk, the emotion, or we can surrender to what's always shining through the loneliness, or again, any experience you're working with. We can surrender to what's often in the background of our experience, seemingly hidden. We can release into being. In this moving toward approach, we go into the coloring and into what's colored. We go into the heart of all things. We go into the heart of who we are. We go into infinite being, which is everywhere and nowhere all at once. How is infinite being nowhere? Because it doesn't exist in a place. infinite being doesn't exist in time. It isn't bound by matter. You don't exist in a place. Your being doesn't exist in time. You aren't bound by matter, by the body. Everything that is and everything that isn't is shining with the same being. Therefore, there's nothing to annihilate, nothing to hold at bay. Nothing to judge and no one to judge it. All can be released to being. In being. As being. Rest in being and find this being in all things. Know this being in all things. Love this being in all things. Thank you, friends. So friends, I'm not going to talk a long time tonight because as you heard Julie mention, my favorite part of these experiences revolves around getting to have exchange with you. But I did think I'd give a little more context for that meditation by just reading the very beginning at the top of chapter 11, sharing that with you tonight. So as I mentioned, this chapter is called Return to Surrender, turning toward what is. You heard in my introduction the mention to monastic training. I trained in the Zen monastic tradition for 8 years. So this chapter starts with, many years into my training, when considering leaving the monastery, I recall speaking to a mentor who said, you are the only one who can determine whether it's time for you to leave right now. The question you must ask yourself is whether you can hold the truth of the true nature of all things in a dog-eat-dog world. And by this, he meant the conditioned world. Needless to say, at that time, I felt I had not yet cultivated this skill. At the time, I believed that once I left my protected cloister of truth, I'd lose my capacity to stay with this truth once thrown back into the world of the relative. By this point in the book, I've been talking a lot about the relative plane of experience and the absolute. So the relative plane where we're experiencing war, injustice, crimes of the heart, the absolute where the truth of oneness is recognized, felt, experienced, realized. I feared that I could only know the intimacy of being if the content of the world had been simplified and reduced. For example, at a monastery where everything's simplified and reduced. Because I valued knowing truth more than anything, I felt I had little choice but to stay. Years later, when I left the monastery, being, quote, back in the world proved to be the best training for being back in the world. And as I look back, I don't believe that it was more time in a silent monastery that prepared me. I believed it was being thrown into everyday life, coupled with my dedication to still know the truth of experience that illuminated the way. How many people in the room know the non-dual teacher Rupert Spira? Okay, many. So if you haven't heard of him before, he just had a great interview with Tammy Simon on Insights of the Edge, if you're interested to learn more about his approach. But he became a beloved mentor and friend over a decade ago. I actually had someone in Portland sent me on one of his retreats because he said, oh, your style of facilitation is very similar to his, and I think you should go and see what he's doing. And I didn't know anything about his approach when I went. But he became a beloved mentor and friend and great supporter of peace in schools. Some years ago, I asked Rupert Spira for feedback about my facilitation. I was feeling unsure, unsteady about my teaching. In response to my queries, he said something I'll never forget. You learn to teach through teaching. In that vein, it's been my experience that you learn to find the true nature in experience through finding the true nature in experience. What's required? A conscious turning toward experience rather than away from it. So as I mentioned in chapter 9, a neti, which refers to a not this, not that approach in practice. So for example, in a neti approach, you would be focused on, I am not this body, I am not these thoughts. So in this neti, not this, not that approach in practice, we recognize I am not these thoughts, I am not this body, I am not these conditioned systems, I am not this separate self. It's an approach that negates. My monastic training reflected this approach. Whatever was determined a distraction was removed. No emailing, no speaking, no eye contact with others, no expressions of the personality. Stripping distractions indeed supported and perhaps allowed for my first life-altering glimpse and direct experience of true nature. Turning away from relative experience allowed for the consciousness in the backdrop of experience to shine more fully at the forefront. But it wasn't until I came back into the world that I was required to more fully practice recognizing what is normally in the backdrop of experience, to recognize it at the forefront, no matter the circumstance. Turning toward versus turning away. In your own life, have you ever found yourself identified with a self who's on a mission to annihilate the self? Have you ever found yourself believing you have to get rid of in order to experience the truth? Believing that the conditioned mind can take charge and try to control and omit thoughts, experiences, people. This is a distortion of this negating approach, and we do it all in the name of spiritual practice. One way I see this take shape to those who are new to practice might look like this. Oh, I've tried meditation practice, but I could never stick with it. I could never seem to clear my mind. As if that's the goal of practice, and as if practice requires a sergeant to be in charge of this assigned, perceived task. Can anyone relate to this? I'm just going to skip a little bit here, friends, and turn to this other point so that we can engage with each other. In this turning towards approach in practice, we look for true nature in all things. We see the inherent spaciousness in all things. We see the reality of all things. As we move into experience, we recognize ourselves as not separate from experience, or to state it without negation, we know the unity of all things. We learn to see through the movie and find the screen that's normally in the backdrop of experience. We find it everywhere and in everything. Turning away and turning toward as approaches, so this negating approach or finding the true nature in all things approach, need not be viewed dualistically. Both approaches lead to the same heart, the heart of awareness, the heart of truth. Both approaches end up with the same recognition, the nature of the screen and the backdrop, the nature of the reality that gets projected onto the screen. All realities share the same reality. In activity, you hide behind things. In the noise of the world, you appear clothed. In silence, you emerge naked. In stillness, you are everywhere. Thank you, friends. I'll leave it there for now because I would like to spend the rest of our time engaging. And I am happy to know there is a mic here. So I would love to hand the mic to anyone who would like to engage. And then I'd like to just ask the community, is there a way to engage with people on Zoom, or are they, oh, someone will have to tell me how to do that. Okay, so I gotta be, I'm gonna be like those lizards that like can see out to, all right, maybe you all can just tell me if someone on Zoom wants to talk. So, is anyone here wishing to engage? Yes, please, Jim. What are my thoughts on eye contact now? Well, I was going to make a joke about it, and I think I will. So when I was training monastically, this is a true story. We would run retreats at the monastery. So we ran these retreats, and people who came to the monastery were encouraged not to make eye contact. You know, we're on retreat together in this monastic setting. As monks, we were not making eye contact. And so these folks came on this retreat, and it was brought to the work director's attention that one of the gentlemen on the retreat was seen coming out of one of the women on the retreat's hermitage late at night. And so the work director went to them and said, well, it has come, you know, you're not supposed to be making eye contact, much less like fill in the blank. So this work director said, well, it's come to our attention that perhaps some guidelines have been broken. And the person's true response was, well, we didn't make eye contact. So I really didn't answer how I feel about eye contact now at all, but I haven't thought of that story in years. And it's a true story. And I think Jim, when I was walking away from you, I thought, well, my husband appreciates that I have eye contact now. And relationally, I sure do appreciate that eye contact is a part of my life. And I think it relates to tonight's topic in an important way. In a monastic setting or a retreat setting where you're not making eye contact, you're removing distractions. You're saying, I want all my attention on what's happening in my practice. And I'm not going to do any monkey business with, wait, did Dan just raise his eyebrow? Does he not like me? Well, I think Dan's thinking this about me. Anybody ever on retreat start projecting all over other people around you? So we're owning our projections, we're turning the attention inward, we're removing distractions. Now in a turning toward approach, we're saying, I actually am moving into these distractions. Another way to talk about it is it's a more tantric approach. So I'm finding God in Dan through connecting with Dan. So I'm moving in, I'm finding the very same thing I'm looking for in two different ways. So for years, I was removing distraction in order to find, in Christian terms, we would say, in order to find the God within, in order to find true nature, in order to find the unity of being, whatever language works for you. In this turning towards approach, and I cover both approaches in the book because I think both are extremely useful, and I do engage in the world now. I couldn't have started a class teaching teenagers by never making eye contact with any of them. They thought I was weird enough, right? I didn't need to add on to it. But this relational experience of seeing another's true nature and using eyes as a vehicle for that connection point is a beautiful thing. So it's one of the reasons that when I lead retreat now, I almost always have hybrid retreats. So half silence, if someone chooses to be not making eye contact, they can. And then half relational, half sharing meals, half having breaks where you're chatting with a friend while eating a cookie. Well, we don't eat cookies for the whole half of the retreat, you know, but you get my point. Relational, sharing food, breaking bread, touching each other in relative plain ways. I've learned for me, that's really useful. So to honestly answer your question, what I feel now is that it has an important role, and I don't subscribe to a view of training that doesn't include it, though I'm grateful for the training I had. Thank you. What else? I know this was a very unique meditation for the kind of meditation that's often done in this space. It was more of a contemplation, an experience of inquiry. How was that for you? What kinds of things came up? And you can say, I hated it. That's juicy for me. You're thinking about sharing. Would you be up for it? Would you like to share? Yes.
I enjoyed it. I practiced a similar meditation earlier today on a YouTube video of you talking, and I was like, I've got to go tonight. This is my first time here at this meeting this group.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you. And I found myself wondering, am I paying attention to the right thing? I'm trying to watch the observer, but is this it? And then it's like, maybe I'm looking at something, I'm feeling like this physical space of my head. I'm like, I'm probably not supposed to be feeling my skull right now. And I just, that was part of the dialogue. It's like, am I in the right spot with my attention?
How many people in a sitting meditation practice period have ever heard a voice of, am I doing this right? It's such a helpful thing, I think, that in spiritual practice, we get to pay attention to how we do anything is how we do everything. So the way that I am habituated to go through my life is, wait, am I doing this right? Am I giving this everything I have? Is this really good? Is it wholesome? For those that know the Enneagram, I'm a 1. So I really like to feel efficient and effective. My personality structure gets rewarded by, okay, I did that right, or I did that well, or that was skillful. So then you go into spiritual practice, you just take it all with you. Okay, so am I doing this right? Am I getting the most out of it? Am I being effective with my practice? So helpful just to notice that that's the self-talk, and that is the point of paying attention, that we can see exactly what's happening in the body, in the mind, in the energetic system. And then what we're doing in a meditation like this is we're stepping back and looking through even that process. So another way to say it would be, what's paying attention? Usually we think of awareness as something that's in the backdrop of our experience. It's kind of just invisible, even though it's there all the time. So what we're doing in this experience is we're pulling awareness into the forefront of experience, even though there's not really a we. It's not like the ego can go in and just drag awareness around like it's a puppet on a stage or something. So I will reward your conditioned mind by saying you did it exactly right. Thank you very much for sharing. And thanks for coming out tonight. How'd you hear about it?
A lot of people told me I should go to this meeting.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, thanks for those who dragged you in. Welcome. Yeah. Yes, please.
I was surprised that you picked loneliness, because you said to pick something that wasn't charged. And so for me, it is very charged. And so I did find by the end that I was able to lessen that negative feeling and become more friends with it, and maybe that's even too positive. So anyway, that was what I experienced throughout it.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for acknowledging. That's one of the hardest parts about, for me, I don't have a history of being trained as a writer. This was my first book for adults. And it was one of the hardest things about writing the book for me. I knew there was no thing I could say that would be true for everybody. So that's fair too, and good self-insight to know that for me, loneliness, and I'm going to say at this moment in your life, might be totally different if I see you next year. But in this moment in your life, that actually has a lot of charge. So good on you, sister, that you moved towards it anyway. You could have been like, oh, I came here to get some meditation on and have a little Dharma talk. Like, no, I didn't come in here tonight to like go into a place of real pain for me tonight. So really, truly, congratulations for taking the assignment on and actually trusting yourself. Because that's what it is, isn't it? We have to trust ourselves if we're moving into difficult spaces. We're trusting that we're going to be adequate to our experience.
I also feel safe here.
Beautiful,
So I think
beautiful.
the combination of those things.
Beautiful. And I want to uplift this community for creating that. That's a really important part of what happens here. Before we teach the teens a single tool in our Peace in Schools Mindful Studies class, we focus on creating an environment of care, confidentiality, acceptance, reverence, and empathy. It's critical. So you had the benefit of, you have that environment of care established enough in yourself. How many people out in the world with no practice at all are moving towards difficult experiences? With inquiry and compassion and curiosity and non-judgment. Like, it's not what we're conditioned to do. So congratulations on a personal level, and then congratulations to the collective for holding that. And then to speak to your experience of loneliness, I absolutely agree with you that befriending might feel a little too lofty. And it's fine to say, in this moment, I'm more interested in just seeing the reality of it. That's freedom. It's like saying, I'm not even going to try to befriend the ghost that haunts me every night, but I am going to see that it's transparent. Every evening it floats into my bedroom, and I'm going to begin to see that it actually can't hurt me. What's coming up now? We are breathing with you. Yes, thank you. One of the beauties of this moving towards approach is that we have the opportunity to see how many forms in our lives have created suffering that are actually holograms. When we're in the midst of being identified with these holograms, they have a felt reality to them. It feels real and true that fill in the blank. What are some fill in the blanks? It feels real and true that I will always be this sad. It's just real and true. I will always be this sad. We can even know from lots of Buddhist readings, teachings, lectures, Dharma talks, everything changes, everything's impermanent. But when we're in it, it feels real and true. I will always be this sad. What we forget when we're stuck in, I will always be this sad, is to investigate what that sadness even is. The very same thing that's illuminating sadness, that's animating sadness, that's making sadness a form of any kind, even just an energetic form, is the very thing that's animating this beautiful swish, almost like ocean waves outside this building as cars drive by and puddles splash. Like this rhythmic wash of water. That we're breathing, that our bodies are made of. Or what's animating joy. So what shifts when we see through the stories of what is and we dive into the reality of what is? And you might notice in the meditation or the contemplation, that's why I started with what's the self-talk? Because the self-talk is when things really feel real. This voice speaking all the time is what makes something seem believable. But the minute you can see through that self-talk is the minute you're starting to explore, you have the opportunity to explore the reality of something. What are you present to in this moment, if you don't mind me asking you, since you shared an example?
I think just curiosity about all the emotions. I mean, I feel that we are all infinitely worthy of all of them, and just approaching it all with curiosity.
Yes, my encouragement is to approach the nature of emotion with curiosity. Step one, you've already done, and that's why I'm speaking to you this way. Step one is see it all with non-judgment and recognize what a gift that we get to have the range of human experience, right? If I haven't gotten there, it might be tricky to start exploring the nature of something. But you've already moved through what a gift. I don't have to be that which is rejecting or seeking and resisting certain emotional experiences. Right? I might fall into that habit or that pattern sometimes, but I don't have to. So now I get to ask, what is this? This sadness is made of the same awareness that joy is. What's that awareness? What's animating that body and Julie's body and Jim's body? We're usually walking around focused on the content. Julie's wearing red, Dan's wearing, right? We're looking at objects and we're objectifying the objects, right? That's how the conditioned mind makes sense of things. So your homework assignment is to explore the reality of things.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone on Zoom? Oh, good. Hi, Linda. I'm sorry I'm not getting to see you in person tonight, Linda. Hi.
Okay. Hi. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Thank you so much for that meditation. And the thought that I had, the feeling I had at the end of it was that you covered everything, every question, everything was covered. It was complete, and I look back at the different lines and it's hard to pick one, but I start with maybe everything that is and everything that isn't is shining with this same being. And then the next one, therefore, there is nothing to annihilate, nothing to hold at bay. All can be released, nothing to judge, and all can be released to being, in being, as being. And then these last ones, just everything. Rest in being and find this being in all things. Know this being in all things. Love this being in all things. That's everything.
Well, Linda, it's very touching to me to hear that that landed for you the way it did. That requires a particular openness on your part, and I just really appreciate hearing that the open space of you drank that up. So thank you, Linda, for just reflecting that. I appreciate hearing your voice tonight and seeing you. I want to acknowledge in terms of my own history with different styles, meditation practice approaches. As Linda reflected that back, Linda, I'm not going to look at you anymore because I was starting to hurt my neck. So just, oh, good. Okay. So it wasn't like I was meeting her intimately with my eye gazing by looking that way anyway. She's like, why am I looking at the back of your head? So, yeah, Linda, what was coming up for me when you were sharing is what a relief it was for me when a particular turn in my own practice happened and I was able to let go of some of the striving that had been part of my spiritual practice. I'm not here to rest in what's inherent. I need to accomplish something in order to find true nature. I need to practice a little harder. I need to, what are your fill in the blanks? When you're caught in that, in your own meditation practice, what's the voice of it? I need to
Get better.
I need to sit longer. I need to get better. I need to become more focused. I need to go on more retreat. It's, my practice would be better. Now I'm about to put a pitch for our weekend retreat. So I do want everyone here would be enlightened by the end of the weekend. If Latifah and I we have a form you can fill out and you get your money back if you don't leave totally awake. But even that, it's really true. The story that if you go on a lot of retreats, then you'll get to have this experience that's actually the core of who you are. It's so close that it can be hard to see with your own eyes, like looking at your own skin, or you're looking at your own eyes. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. Friends, I'm looking at our time and I would just love to keep chatting, and I want to honor your time. I heard I was reminded this is the time you usually close. I will just say a couple things. That retreat that Julie mentioned, the Whidbey Island retreat, I don't mean to have favorite retreats each year, but I will say that's probably my favorite retreat. And I think one of the reasons why is I get the whole campus. I'm being kicked out, y'all, see? It's a meditation group, so you get kicked out very gently. It's like you get kicked out with like a sweet little chime that says, be on your way now. But yes, this Whidbey Island retreat is really, really a special one, and I do it every summer. And I love that I get to have the whole campus. So it's it becomes a real sacred, it's a sacred place anyway, but it becomes a real sacred container. So I do want to just mention that's in July for those that are feeling adventurous. Whidbey Island is such a incredible place in general. Like I said, I went, and then it's not that I went and didn't leave. I went with my husband. We thought we were just going up for like an anniversary trip, and we loved it so much. We went there every year. We always stayed in the same Airbnb, even though we could go anywhere within our budget, which is like a circle around Portland that's only so big. But we kept going back to Whidbey Island. And then after my mom passed, I didn't need to be right next to an airport anymore. And I had spent years I was 8 minutes from the Portland airport, and I could be I could be to my mom's bed by morning. And so as soon as I didn't need that anymore, Vineet, my husband, and I had always talked about, well, maybe Whidbey Island's like a retirement vision. And then it became like one of those, why are we waiting kinds of questions. So anyway, we're very lucky to live there in a very small shipping container that my husband is converting. It's pretty fun. For a year, we've had an outdoor kitchen. Don't you love how I told you all I was going to let you go, and then I just start telling you stories? So there's retreat, July, Whidbey Island, and then as you heard, Latifa, who many people in the room I hear know, Pat Coffey, who many people in the room of course know, Pat Coffey's wife, who I have known since her son Christopher was in 3rd grade, and I was running the aftercare program out in Crozet for the Waldorf School. And so, yeah, Latifa and I have known each other probably 27 years, and I'm very much looking forward to her doorway in, which is a Sufi doorway in, and my doorway in, which is, I don't know what to call it, meeting each other. So if you can join us this weekend at Serenity Bridge, we still have room. And I thank you for being here. I would love to not take books home in my suitcase. So if you want to buy a book for a friend, great, you can Venmo me, and I'm happy to write in them too if you want me to sign one for someone. And I want to just thank you so much, and I want to thank this community again so much. I love being here, and it's such a delight to see you all again, so thank you.